interested, so Leslie Smith from ARC. All papers are reporting this morning that the turnout was 64% or thereabouts, which in Britain at a general election would be regarded as a crisis, not a victory. And actually picking up on the remark about Australia compulsory voting, what do you think could galvanise the remaining 36% of Americans to go to the polls? And secondly, does that not mean that the Democrats have been suffering from disaffected voters? If Obama can't maintain the enthusiasm for 4 years, he'll have great difficulty getting re-elected if those people go, abandon the polls once again.
I think it was the largest turnout, some would argue, since 1908, which doesn't, as you say, it doesn't necessarily speak well for the American system. The last time the turnout was really close to this was Kennedy-Nixon in 1960. But Sarah, what do you think would increase turnout if this didn't?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. Look, this is, as we all started out by saying, and we have, kind of maybe lost sight of a little bit, that as exciting as this is, there are, it hasn't completely fixed everything, by a long shot. And so, no, we don't know that he's, 95% of African Americans voted for him. There were stories of, there was a woman on the BBC saying that her father, who was 78 years old, had never voted before because he couldn't see the point, and finally it was brought up to the polls. Well, if Obama doesn't sustain that kind of excitement, then he's going to lose those kinds of first-time voters that he got in. I think there was an 80% turnout in Virginia, or was it North Carolina? It was one of the two Southern Republican states that was swinging in. And is he going to be able to maintain that kind of turnout? Probably not. On the other hand, if he can solidify, if he can be a good president, if he can actually he can't achieve all of the things he said he's going to achieve, we're all in agreement with that. But if he can seem to actually be making some strides toward those things, if he can actually seem to be turning things around, if he can just turn in a solid performance, then he might actually begin to convince some of the doubters. A lot of the doubters were not racist, small town, know nothing. Some of them doubted him because he doesn't have any experience. Some of them doubted him because they don't actually know what he stands for. Some of them doubted him because his rhetoric is fuzzy. So if it can turn out that there is something behind all of that and that he's a decent president, then he might just start to convince some of the people who do vote, but were dubious about him.
The other thing, which I have one more question, the other thing I would add is that it's important to remember that the American system is a federal system, and people vote in lots of elections. Local elections, to some people, matter at least as much as the federal elections, and I think that's a point worth making. Anyway, one more question, please. Thank you.
CBS News. Radio 4 had a rather amusing piece this morning about a hypothetical race between President Sarkozy and Prime Minister Brown to be first to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and had it say, it went on to speculate that perhaps Prime Minister Brown could take on an advisory capability akin to one that we haven't seen since Harold Macmillan mentored and advised President Kennedy. I'd be curious from the Brits on the panel about their view on Brown's influence on Obama.
Thanks. Bronwyn.
I was distracted by the comparison of Brown to Macmillan. I'm sure he would love to have an advisory role for Obama. The world is competing for that position, as well as a couple of thousand overqualified people in the States. I think he's going to be lucky to get a lot of face time. Beyond the basics.
When you mentioned the Macmillan equation, it reminds me of after Macmillan made the speech about how he wanted Britain to be Greece to America's Rome. A Labour member got up in the House of Commons and asked Macmillan, as a double first classicist from Balliol, whether it wasn't true that the Greeks in the Roman Empire were slaves. And Macmillan had to admit that the ones in Rome, yes, were. I think Brown actually is going to be listened to quite a lot in Washington, for the simple reason that the first thing that Obama's got to deliver are extra troops from NATO in Afghanistan, and so Brown is going to be a pretty key person, both in providing a few more, and more importantly, in trying to get the Germans and the French to. I don't personally think it's going to happen, but it might, and it would be wonderful if it did. but that will be the key reason that Brown will be listened to in Washington, and it's the right reason. It's the reason that British Prime Ministers have been listened to historically.
Thank you. I hope that that at least some of you, if not all of you, would like to stay for coffee afterwards. I think we have some time. The panelists, some of them at least, will be around and will be happy to talk to you. And I would very much like to thank them for coming this morning and sharing their views with us. Thank you. Thank you very much.